Thank you.
Thank you.
And with all of those titles and all of those things, I am most grateful and most joyous to be that boy's father. Haven't messed him up too much yet. Haven't messed him up too much. But what does the bumper sticker say? Live long enough to be a burden to your children? No. Well, namaste, everyone. It is so great to be here. So wonderful to be back with you all. My title for today, get a good look at the time so we spend the next 2 hours, is Joy Through Gratitude, because this month it's Resurrection Through Joy is our theme. And I thought about that. I mentioned it to a friend of mine closer to Easter. And she said, well, you can't have resurrection without crucifixion. And I thought about that for a minute. I thought, wow, that's kind of harsh. Might be true, especially around Easter. Could be true. Maybe resurrection with maybe some form of death or just a resurgence. So I started thinking more about the death thing. And we die to the old, we blossom to the new. I think about we die to the older, lower vibration and hopefully are born new to more enlightened, higher vibration. We shed the old clothing to put on the new robe. But then I started thinking about, I never really understood the last line of one of my favorite prayers, the prayer of St. Francis. I always thought it was just another one of those Christian control mechanisms, to make me think I wasn't worthy enough. And then I had to think about it some more and process it some more. So allow me to share with you. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant so much that I might not be consoled. Seek to be consoled as to consoled. To be understood as to understand. To be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. That's the part I didn't understand. But is a death to the old way of thinking to allow the birth of a new higher vibration, a more enlightened vibration, a more inclusive, more loving thought process. I like it when you look at it that way. That's the whole thing about New Thought that I love. Give me a scripture that I felt imprisoned by and give me the key to get out of it. It's not the definition, it's a definition. And I kind of like that, whether it's Ernest Holmes or Edgar Cayce or any of the folks that we all follow. So I like that stuff. Reverend Bonnie reminded us of Ernest Holmes' definition of resurrection, which is the death of the belief that we are separated from God. But we have this eternal life when we realize that we're not separated from each other and we're not separated from our source. That's the liberation. That's the higher vibration. So when Tina delivered her message a few weeks ago, she said to laugh as if there was no reason because it really makes people think. And boy, do I have a story for you for that. A week and a half ago, I was doing a little punch list at a house I've been remodeling, taking the blue painter's tape, walking through the house, putting it in certain areas, walking on the outside of the house, almost finished, got to the very end, and there was a brick way up here, so I jumped up to put the tape up there that some paint had gotten on, and my foot landed on the cement curb and rolled right off the tail, and I heard it snap. And I thought, wow, I just broke my ankle. And I was shocked that I went into such shock that I didn't even take the Lord's name in vain. I didn't curse. I just started yelling. And I yelled a lot. And then I thought, well, Mom and Dad are at the lake. My sister's out of town. So I called Baylor's mom and I said, hey, I think I just broke my ankle. Would you please come pick me up? And this guy had just driven by. I was outside, and I looked at him, and he saw me on the phone, and I got off the phone, and I'm literally writhing in pain. I'm just doing this and trying to breathe, and he gets out of his car, and he walks up, and he says, are you okay? And I said, no, I think I broke my ankle. And he said, well, I saw you on the phone, and I just thought you were yelling at your contractor, I'm usually on the other end of that call, being a roofer. And he said, no, let me come take a look at it. And he said, I need to make sure it's not bleeding or anything. And so he pulled up my pant leg, and I looked down, and it looked like there was a tennis ball on the outside of my ankle. I was like, oh. Anyway, so I got up to the doctor's office, and I just got tickled. And I think I started laughing so that I wouldn't cry because they hadn't given me a shot yet. And I started laughing, and I got tickled, and I laughed louder. And Stacy's telling me that all the doctors and the nurses are listening. And they got me the shot a couple of minutes later, and it hadn't kicked in yet, but I kept laughing so much that they came in and gave me a drug test. They wanted to know what was making me laugh so much. And so laugh with people because it messes with them, you know. And so the next day I was getting some physical therapy, and a friend of mine saw me there, and she came up and she said, "Hey, Bram, how you doing?" To which my response was, "I am blessed." And the guy that was working on my ankle, he said, "Even with a blown out ankle?" And I said, "Absolutely. I'm so blessed. My ankle's not broken. It's going to heal. You know, I dislocated it. I blew out the tendon and the ligament and stuff like that. But until yesterday, I had a boot on, a big supportive boot, which, by the way, they said I would wear for at least 30 days. It's been 10. The power of prayer, the power of positive thinking, and or just laughter, or just joy. I chose to see it in a different way, and I chose to be grateful. And I did everything the doctor asked me to do, and do all those things, but see it how you want it to be. Y'all have heard me say that a number of times. I find joy in being blessed. Tina also said that she was asking people in preparation for her message what brings them joy. And one of the things that she talked about, I don't immediately go to when I think of joy or peace of mind, but it probably brings me those two things in greater abundance than anything else, and that's the smell of rain in the desert. Now, I'm from Ruidoso, and I love the smell of rain in the mountains, but for those of us that have lived in the desert, grown up in the desert, and realize that rain is a wonderful thing and a rare thing, the smell of rain just brings me phenomenal joy. Enjoy that so much. And it's important that we know what brings us joy, because that's what we use for manifestation. Very, very important. And Reverend Bonnie mentioned a few minutes ago, today is the Wesak Moon Festival. I was going to mention it as well. Today is the most powerful full moon of the year. Whatever you do today, if you do it with intent, Master Co, one of my teachers, says it's like doing everything you're doing today multiplied by 1,000. So today, I mean, it's usually about an hour, but today it's longer, and I'm sure it'll be broken up. But if you get the chance to come back at 5:30, they're going to live stream this. And if you can't come back and you're at home, I believe it's uspranichealing.com, and it'll be a 3-hour process. But today, the gateways, the energies are just very, very powerful. In fact, Baylor said, "Dad, I need your pen as soon as we get up here." He drove me up here today. He said, "I need your pen because I want to start writing down what I want to manifest for this next year." I've done this the last 5, 6, 7 years, and I look back in my notebook that I keep for that, and I look at what my heart's desire has been. And it's changed, but I'm amazed at what has come to fruition. And then I noticed the difference in the words that I use, because some people say, "Well, I would like this, and Lord, please give me that," and stuff like that. And I told Baylor, as I would tell all the people that I care about and love, I try to do it now like I'm reading out of Mark. Believe that it's already done. Give thanks. Thank you that I've been accepted to the top university that I wanted to go to. Thank you that I'm going to have a phenomenal roommate. Thank you for the wonderful professors that I'm going to be exposed to. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's in gratitude, but saying it more from you're claiming it instead of asking for it. So get off the soapbox there, but today is a very, very powerful day. So please enjoy that if you can. So what is the difference between happiness and joy? The definition, the dictionary says, happy is delighted, pleased, glad, whereas joy is the emotion of great delight, something exceptionally good, an immense elation. Reverend Randy reminded us a couple of weeks ago that happiness or pleasure is found outside of us, whereas joy is an inside job. Joy comes from within. He said that happiness is a mile wide and an inch deep, whereas joy is a mile wide and a mile deep. He reminded us that gratitude is what makes us joyful, and there is no opposite of joy. I love that. So saying thank you for what you've already received ignites even more manifestation in my mind. Saying thank you in advance is your faith. It affirms your belief in an abundant, friendly universe. Living from gratitude opens you up to receive. If you want to see gratitude, if you want joy, all you got to do is look at Trevor's smile. That doesn't lighten up your day. I don't know what will. That's just amazing. See, I believe that gratitude heals our past while at the same time it creates our future. 3 years ago in August, we had just finished up a whole bunch of work, and I had no work on the books. We were standing around looking at each other with no work. And I started to get freaked out, and I said, all right, I better get a control of my mind, better start thinking about what I'm going to do. Am I going to put my energy in my fear or in my faith? And so I just started giving gratitude that the perfect jobs would be coming along. And before you know it, they did. We've had the most expansive, profitable, most wonderful last 3 years that my company has ever experienced. But it didn't happen by me worrying and fretting over what the issue was right then and there. I had to see it how I wanted it to be. Giving thanks, seeing it how I wanted it to be. Now, you can fake it till you make it. That works. Or as Peggy Shin tells us, you can also faith it till you make it. I like that one. Either way, we've got to create this feeling of joy and have this attitude of gratitude to manifest what we want and get out of the challenge or the situation that we currently find ourselves in. But the energy of the vibration of the issue, the problem, the challenge is not the same energy of the solution. Even Einstein said it's not the same electrons, neurons, protons, all of that stuff. It's very different. So as long as we're staring at the problem, we're never going to find the solution. Now, I'm all for wallowing in it for a while. We found ourselves there. Perhaps we even co-created it. But then at some point, you've got to pivot and see it how you want it to be. You got to change the focus, change the thought process. I wrote down here, it's literally like changing the dial on your radio station. You're never going to hear Mozart when you're listening to David Allan Coe. You know, I was drunk the day my mama got home from prison. You know, I think the next line is, and it was raining and she got run over by a danged old train or something like that. You're not going to hear Mozart when your thought process is David Allan Coe, with all due respect. So what are you listening to? What are you thinking about? What are you ruminating upon? Because you're planning a future event. Abraham says whatever you're thinking about, you're planning a future event. If you're worrying, you're planning a future event that you don't want to happen. So all I'm asking is get control of the thought process. We finished up some big projects last September, and once again, I found myself in the exact same position. I was staring right at fourth quarter without a speck of work on the books. 25 guys working with us out in the field. All right, what am I going to do? Well, I'm not going to freak out. I'm going to relax. I'm going to take a deep breath and see it how I want it to be. And just started giving thanks immediately that perfection would come, because God, as my source, my spirit, has provided and continues to provide over and over. And the more you exercise that muscle, the stronger it gets. And if you don't, it'll atrophy and go away. So it all depends on where we're giving our energy. So a few weeks later, after I started thinking these good thoughts and just more gratitude, I got a phone call from a company that we'd never done any work for. And they said, we've gone through every roofer in town. We're not getting the service that we want. Would you please be willing to take a look at some of our projects? And they gave me a whole list of roofs to look at. So I inspected a bunch of them, and I asked them after I looked at it a bunch, I said, are you aware that you need to contact your insurance company? You've got hail damage on a whole bunch of them. They weren't aware of that. We were able to help them out, and that has created about 28 massive roofing jobs for us this year. Just what, out of thin air or out of gratitude? I don't know. See it how you want it to be. I'm so grateful for that. You got to use it or you lose it. You got to continue to use that strength, that understanding to tap in, tune in, turn on to your gratitude. What brings you joy? So last November, I was on my way to church down at Unity in El Paso. And if anybody's traveled to El Paso in the last 3 years, you know that my side of town is under construction. They're redoing the entire freeway system down there, which at some point I will find myself grateful for. I'm still working on that one. And got on the freeway, standstill. Got off the first exit I could, that next street was blocked. Then the next one was blocked. So I know how the universe is telling me I don't have to go to church. So I went home that day and turned on, and there's Oprah, her Sunday Soul series. And I love that show. And I started watching it, and she was talking about her most recent book, this one right here, and it's The Wisdom of Sundays, Life-Changing Insights from Super Soul Conversations, where she interviews a bunch of different people, and she took those interviews and brilliantly just put them down in paper here. And when I first saw this, it was already sold out. It hadn't been out for a week. You couldn't find it anywhere in town. So I downloaded it electronically so I could read it, and an audiobook as well. And I want to share with you some of the things that I found that day. The most fundamental lesson that you can take away from Super Soul Sunday series is gratitude. She says that gratitude is its own energy field, and when you acknowledge and are grateful for whatever you have, it allows more to be drawn to you and changes the way we experience life. Grace is transformative. The more grateful we are, the more grace mirrors the gratitude that we have. Oprah says, I know it's not easy to be grateful at the time, but I've learned that when you feel the least thankful, you are in most need of what gratitude provides, which is perspective. She reminded us that Master Eckhart says, if the only prayer that you ever say, the only thing that you ever say is thank you, that's more than enough. Thank you. So Oprah is interviewing Tony Robbins, one of my favorites, my NLP coach. And he says that it takes high energy to make change. It takes a high vibration. I think we can all appreciate that. But when you're suffering, it's harder. So he says when you're in a high state of love or creativity, gratitude, passion, in those states, it's easy to get to the solution. So he made a decision last year that no matter what he was going through, that he would find joy or ecstasy in the moment. And he said that if I can't do that in any situation he finds himself in, that he said, doesn't matter if I help one more person, build one more business, solve one more problem, buy one more island. He says, if I can't find joy, ecstasy, appreciation in this moment, then why am I here? And I mentioned to you all a couple of years ago. I mean, I remember just trying to get the business going and complaining, kvetching about, boy, if we just had this or we just had that. And then the next thing I know, a year later, we're knocking it out of the park. And I found myself complaining again. I'm like, wait a minute, Brambo. That's not good. Let's find a way to be grateful in the moment. So he looks for that thing to be grateful for. But when you're going through the poop of what's going on, this challenge, this problem, it's hard to get to ecstasy from suffering. So he says what he does is he finds something to be appreciative for. Find something that you can appreciate. The first step is what Tina talked about the other day. What can you appreciate? The beauty of the mountains, the sunset, where we live, the smell of rain. Find one thing literally in the moment that you can appreciate. Because the minute we start to appreciate, we get out of our own self. We stop obsessing. Tony tells people most of your suffering comes from expectation. Trade your expectation for appreciation. Your whole life changes in that moment and the suffering ends. But see, we've got this blueprint of how we think things are supposed to be. So when life doesn't match our blueprint, he'll ask people, tell me one thing that you're happy about. Tell me one thing that brings you joy. And that is what we call in NLP, that's a state change. In law of attraction, it's a pivot point. Again, we can't find the solution as long as we're focusing on the problem. And people will say, well, I'm not happy about much. And you'll say, tell me one thing that you're happy about. And they'll go, well, I'm happy with my children, or I'm happy with God. And then he says, okay, well, why are you happy? He says, well, because my children are the way I want them to be. He says, oh, so you like to control them. You know, when everything matches up the way you want, that's what makes you happy. So when life matches your blueprint, you're happy. And when it doesn't, you're in pain. When life doesn't match your blueprint and you feel helpless to change it, that's called suffering. That's the dark night of the soul. And when people get to this point, including me, I start to blame. I'll blame the conditions. I might even blame other people. But this is just a delusion. It's just the delusion that the mind is taking over. And blaming is not going to change anything. Our choices are to change our blueprint or to change our expectation to appreciation. So remembering, if you are criticizing, you're not being grateful. If you're blaming, you're not being grateful. If you're complaining, you're not being grateful. If you're feeling tension, if you're in a bad mood, if you're rushing, you're not feeling grateful, because gratitude can transform our life. So are we allowing the minor things to get in the way of the transformation that we really want? Again, he talks about suffering. He says, then go to appreciation, which then can lead to gratitude, which then can lead to joy. These are tangible steps. We're not going to jump from this low vibration all the way over to here. I mean, when stuff happens, it happens. But if you want to stay there, fine. But if you want something better, you've got to feel better. And to do that, find something that you appreciate, and it'll take you out of your pain and suffering. Another person that Oprah interviews in this book is Tracy Jackson, and she says, if you have gratitude, then you don't have room for fear. And you can't have fear and love at the same time. You can't have fear and gratitude at the same time. So if you're grateful, you move to that place of love, and love is where the answers come from. Michael Bernard Beckwith says, begin to notice what you have in your life that you're grateful for, and you can look at life through a new lens of gratitude. And you don't see as many obstacles, you don't see as many hindrances, you see potential and possibilities. And then you become an open vehicle for more inspiration, more wisdom, more love, more guidance. So here's something a little bit more tangible. Oprah was interviewing Sean Aker, and they found that if you wake up every morning and practice saying 3 things that you're grateful for, each morning for 21 days, wake up, and before you roll out of bed, 3 things that you're grateful for. They got to be different every day. If you'll do that for 21 days, what they found when they did this large study is people that were testing at low-level pessimists were now testing at low-level optimists just 21 days later. Now, I have to read this part because I didn't quite believe it to be true, but they studied 84-year-old men with genes for pessimism. I didn't know there was a gene for pessimism, but I suppose there could be. And when they did this for 21 days, they found that even if you've been a pessimist for 8 decades of your life, that literally 2 minutes, 30 seconds of practicing 3 things that you're grateful for each day literally changed their vibration and changed their outlook on life. Appreciation and gratitude are the building blocks of how human beings change. So we need to find something to appreciate. Let that level of appreciation turn to gratitude, and then that vibration of gratitude is what will manifest something wonderful and more joyful in our lives. Let me close with a couple of quotes from Abraham, always my favorites. Abraham through Esther says, the standard of success in life is not the things, it's not the money, it's not the stuff, it's literally the amount of joy that we feel. The discipline is that you must exercise to make that decision that nothing is more important than that you feel good and that you're going to find thoughts that feel better. I think we always want to tell it like it is. Well, tell it like it is if you like it like it is. But if you don't like it is, tell it like you want it to be until it bees like you want it to be. Remember that when you go to a family reunion, for sure. Abraham said, if we were talking to you on your first day here, we would say, welcome to planet Earth. Welcome to the Earth School. There is nothing you cannot be, do, or have. And your work here, your lifetime career, is to seek joy. That's it. I think most of the time we think, well, I can't be joyful because then I can't have fun or I'm giving up discipline. Well, it's a discipline to be joyful. You know, back to that definition between happiness and joy, to me, joy is happiness on steroids. You know, it shouldn't be de vez en cuando, every once in a while. It should be all the time. It should be a lot more. You know, is the music, is it the notes or is it the space between? You know, I think we need joy more often, and that's what raises that vibration. So every day, just take a few minutes of seeing yourself in joy, feeling yourself in joy, basking in joy, and the universe will align everything as if you need it to be. Pivot, appreciate, attitude of gratitude, and allow joy to blossom and create the life of your dreams. Thank you, and namaste.